I'm sitting here in Dumaguete City at 77 years old, and I need to tell you something that still feels impossible when I say it out loud. 5 years ago, I was standing in an empty house in Sacramento, California, with exactly $4,300 to my name, no wife, no future, and genuinely wondering if I should just be done with it all. Today, I'm looking at the ocean from my balcony. I've got a woman I love sleeping in the next room. I eat better than I have in decades, and I wake up every single morning grateful I didn't give up. I'm not selling you a fantasy. What happened to me between those two moments was brutal and beautiful and completely unexpected. And if you're sitting wherever you are right now thinking your life is over because of age or money or loss, I need you to hear this story. My name is Richard Caldwell. For 41 years, I sold insurance in Sacramento. Not the exciting kind, just regular policies for regular people. I was good at it. I made decent money. Nothing spectacular, but we had a nice three-bedroom house in Elk Grove, 2 cars paid off, and about $380,000 in retirement savings by the time I turned 70. My wife, Catherine, and we'd been married for 48 years. We had 2 kids, both grown and moved to different states. Our life was comfortable, predictable. I played golf on Thursdays. Catherine had her book club. We talked about traveling more, but never quite got around to it. You know that life. A lot of you lived it too. Catherine started getting sick in 2016. First they said it was just fatigue. Then they found the cancer, ovarian. Stage 3 by the time they caught it. What followed was 2 years of treatments that I wouldn't wish on anyone. Chemotherapy, radiation, experimental drugs that cost more than our first house. Our insurance covered some of it, not nearly enough. I pulled money from our retirement accounts. Then I pulled more. Catherine was in pain every single day, and if there was a treatment somewhere that might help, we tried it. You do that. You don't think about the cost when it's the person you've spent your entire adult life with. She died on November 14th, 2018. I was 72 years old, sitting next to her hospital bed holding her hand when she went. The funeral cost $18,000. I didn't know funerals cost that much. I was so deep in grief I just signed whatever papers they put in front of me. After it was over, I went home to that empty house and started going through the finances, trying to figure out what I had left. That's when everything came apart. Turns out I didn't understand our retirement accounts as well as I thought I did. I'd taken early withdrawals to pay for Catherine's treatments, which meant penalties on top of taxes. I'd made decisions while exhausted and terrified that didn't make financial sense. I'd trusted a financial advisor who'd moved our money into high-risk investments right before the market took a downturn. I won't bore you with all the details, but when I sat down with an accountant in January of 2019 and laid everything out, here's what I had. About $93,000 left in retirement accounts, the house with about $140,000 in equity, and my Social Security, which was around $1,900 a month. That might sound okay to some of you. It wasn't. The property taxes on our house were $6,800 a year. Insurance was $2,200. I needed new windows, new roof within a year or two. My own health insurance, since I wasn't quite old enough for Medicare yet, was running me $1,100 a month. I did the math over and over. I couldn't afford to stay in that house. I couldn't afford to stay in California. I could barely afford to stay alive. I put the house on the market in March. Housing prices in our neighborhood had dropped. We'd bought in at the wrong time, refinanced at another wrong time. After the realtor fees and paying off what little mortgage was left, I walked away with about $115,000. Combined with my retirement savings, I had right around $200,000 total, at 72 years old, for what was supposed to be the rest of my life. My daughter Jennifer called me every week from North Carolina trying to convince me to move near her. She meant well, but she had 3 kids and a husband who just lost his job. She didn't have room for me, not really. My son Paul was in Washington State, and we hadn't been close in years. I wasn't going to show up on his doorstep. I started looking at senior apartments in cheaper parts of California. The decent ones wanted $3,000 a month. I looked at Arizona, Nevada, Texas. Everything I could afford looked like a place to go die. I'm not exaggerating when I say I thought about it, ending things. I was alone in a one-bedroom apartment I'd rented month to month in a bad part of Sacramento, eating frozen dinners, no purpose, watching my money drain away, and I genuinely couldn't see the point of continuing. I'd lost my wife. I'd lost my home. I'd lost the future I'd imagined. What was I holding on for? There was this guy I used to play golf with, Tom Henriksen. We hadn't talked much since Catherine died, but he called me out of nowhere one afternoon in May. Said he'd heard about Catherine and about me selling the house, and he wanted to buy me lunch. I almost said no. But I had nothing else to do, so I met him at this diner we used to go to after golf. Tom had retired about 5 years earlier, and I hadn't seen him in at least 3. He looked different, tanned, relaxed, healthy. He told me he'd been living in the Philippines for the past 4 years. I'm embarrassed to say I didn't really know where the Philippines was. I mean, I knew it was in Asia somewhere, but that was about it. Tom started telling me about his life there. He had a 2-bedroom condo right on the water. He said his rent was $400 a month. His utilities were about $60. He ate out almost every meal because it was cheaper than cooking, and a full dinner with a couple of beers cost him $4 or $5. I thought he was exaggerating. He pulled out his phone and showed me pictures. His place, the beach, receipts from restaurants. He walked me through his actual budget. He was living on about $1,300 a month, comfortably, and banking the rest of his Social Security. He'd met a Filipina woman who he was serious about. He said he hadn't felt this good in 20 years. I went home that night and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I got on my laptop and started researching. I fell down a rabbit hole that lasted until 4 in the morning. I learned about retirement visas in the Philippines. I learned about cost of living. I watched YouTube videos of guys who'd moved there. Some of it looked too good to be true. Some of it looked sketchy. But the numbers kept checking out. I could live there on a fraction of what it cost in the States. Here's the thing, though. I was 72. I'd never been outside the United States except for one trip to Cancun in the 90s. I didn't know anything about Asia. I didn't know anyone in the Philippines except Tom, and I barely knew him. The idea of moving to a country on the other side of the world by myself felt insane. But what was the alternative? Spend the next 10 or 15 years pinching every penny in some depressing apartment in America, alone, waiting to die? At least if I tried this and it didn't work out, I could come back. I had enough money to give it a real shot. I called Tom the next day and asked him 100 questions. He answered every one. He told me to come visit first, stay for a month, see what I thought. He said I could stay with him for a couple weeks to get oriented. I booked a ticket for July. Round trip, just in case. It cost me about $900, which felt like a lot, but also like the least crazy thing I'd spent money on in a long time. I landed in Manila on July 18th, 2019. I was terrified. The airport was chaos. Hot, crowded, people everywhere speaking Tagalog. I couldn't read half the signs. I had 2 suitcases with basically everything I still owned in the world. I made it through immigration, got my bags, walked out into the arrivals area, and Tom was standing there with a big grin holding a sign with my name on it like I was somebody important. We spent 2 days in Manila. I hated it. Too big, too polluted, too overwhelming. Then we flew to Dumaguete, which is on an island called Negros Oriental in the central Philippines. The moment I walked out of that tiny airport, something shifted. The air smelled like ocean and jungle. The pace was slower. Tom drove me down Rizal Boulevard, which runs right along the water, and I saw mountains across the strait and people walking and eating and laughing, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. Possibility. Tom's condo was in a building about 10 minutes from downtown. Nothing fancy, older building, but clean, with a little pool and a view of the ocean from his balcony. That first week I barely did anything. I was jet-lagged and disoriented. Tom took me around, showed me where to buy groceries, where the good restaurants were, introduced me to some of his expat friends. Everyone was friendly, almost aggressively friendly. I wasn't used to it. The heat was brutal at first. It's always hot in Dumaguete. High 80s every day, humid. But there was always a breeze, and after a few days I adjusted. I started walking along the boulevard every morning. I'd stop at this little cafe called Lantaw and get a coffee and some pandesal, which is a Filipino bread roll, for less than $1 total. I'd sit there watching boats and tricycles go by, and I'd think about how impossible this all was. Tom introduced me to his girlfriend, Maricel. She was 52, had 3 grown kids, worked as a teacher. She was kind and funny and clearly made Tom happy. She had a sister, Gloria, who was a real estate agent, and Tom suggested I talk to her if I was serious about staying. I wasn't sure I was, but I talked to her anyway. Gloria took me to see about a dozen places over 3 days. Studios, 1-bedrooms, a couple of small houses. I saw places for $300 a month that were dark and depressing. I saw places for $700 that were really nice but felt like more than I needed. Then she showed me a 1-bedroom unit in a newer building in Mangnao, which is a neighborhood just south of the city center. 6th floor. Balcony facing west toward the mountains, fully furnished. The owner was a Filipino guy who worked overseas and just wanted someone reliable to take care of it. Rent was $450 a month, including water. I'd pay my own electric, maybe $40 or $50 a month with air conditioning. I stood on that balcony looking at the sunset, turning the sky orange and pink, and I thought about the apartment I'd left behind in Sacramento. Beige walls, view of a parking lot, for twice the price. I told Gloria I'd take it. That's when it became real. I wasn't just visiting. I was moving to the Philippines. I flew back to California in mid-August to pack up and close out my life there. It was harder than I expected. I sold or gave away almost everything I owned. Furniture, books, clothes, kitchen stuff. All the things Catherine and I had accumulated. Our kids took a few boxes of photos and mementos. The rest went to Goodwill or the dump. I kept 2 suitcases of clothes, my laptop, some documents, and a photo album. That was it. 72 years of life in America condensed to 100 pounds of luggage. I closed my bank account and opened a new one that didn't charge foreign transaction fees. I applied for the Philippine retirement visa, called SRRV, which required depositing $20,000 in a Philippine bank that I could access later. I had to get a bunch of documents authenticated. It was bureaucratic and annoying, but Tom walked me through it. My daughter cried when I told her I was moving. She thought I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. My son said, "Do what you want, Dad," which was about the most enthusiasm I expected from him. A couple friends from work took me out for a goodbye dinner and wished me luck in a way that made it clear they thought I was making a huge mistake. On October 9th, 2019, I boarded a one-way flight from San Francisco to Manila. I was 73 years old. I had about $180,000 in the bank, my Social Security, and no idea if I was doing the right thing. I remember sitting in that plane seat during the 14-hour flight thinking about Catherine and wondering what she'd say. Probably that I was being ridiculous, but maybe she'd understand. Maybe she'd want me to try to be happy again. I got to Dumaguete late at night. Tom picked me up again. We drove through dark streets to my new building. I took the elevator to the 6th floor, unlocked the door to my condo, and walked into my new life. It was almost midnight. I was exhausted. I dropped my bags, walked out onto the balcony, and looked at the lights of the city below and the dark outline of the mountains beyond. A dog was barking somewhere. A motorcycle drove by. The air smelled like charcoal and flowers. I thought, okay, Richard, you're here. Now what? The first month was harder than I'd expected. Not because the Philippines was bad, but because I didn't know how to be a person anymore. For 2 years, my entire existence had been taking care of Catherine, and then grieving Catherine. I didn't have hobbies. I didn't have routines that were mine. And now I was in this foreign country where I didn't speak the language or understand how anything worked, and I had to build a life from scratch. The practical stuff came first. I had to figure out how to buy groceries. There was a Robinson's supermarket about 15 minutes away that had most things I recognized, but it was more expensive. The public market downtown was cheaper but overwhelming. Whole fish with heads still on, vegetables I didn't recognize, vendors yelling prices in pesos that I had to convert in my head. 50 pesos to $1, roughly. I bought a kilo of mangoes for 40 pesos, less than $1, and they were the best mangoes I'd ever tasted. I had to learn how to deal with the power company, the water delivery service, the internet provider. Everything required more patience than I was used to. Things moved slowly. You couldn't just call customer service and get answers. You had to go to an office and wait and talk to someone and maybe come back tomorrow. But people were helpful. Almost everyone spoke at least some English. When I got frustrated, they'd smile and say, "Slowly, slowly," which became sort of a mantra for me. Tom and Maricel had me over for dinner at least once a week those first few months. Maricel cooked traditional Filipino food, and I tried everything. Adobo, which is chicken or pork in vinegar and soy sauce. Sinigang, a sour soup that I didn't like at first but grew to love. Lechon, roasted pig, which was incredible. She'd always make way too much food and send me home with leftovers. I think she felt sorry for me, this old American guy eating alone. Through Tom, I met other expats. There's a surprising number of foreigners in Dumaguete. Americans, Australians, Germans, Brits. A lot of retirees, some younger guys married to Filipinas. There was a group that met every Friday at a bar called Hiya High for what they called expat night. I started going. It was nice to talk to people who understood what it was like to be foreign here. But I also noticed something. A lot of these guys did nothing but complain. The heat, the noise, how things didn't work like back home, how Filipinos did this wrong or that wrong. It started to irritate me. If they hated it so much, why were they here? There was this one guy, Australian, maybe 65, who talked constantly about his condo fees going up and his girlfriend asking for money for her family and how you couldn't trust anyone. I listened to him go on for about 20 minutes one night, and then I excused myself and never sat near him again. I didn't move halfway around the world to be miserable. I'd already been miserable. I was here to try something different. I started exploring on my own. I'd take a tricycle, which is a motorcycle with a sidecar, to different parts of the city. They cost 15 or 20 pesos for most trips, maybe 50 cents. I found a little restaurant in Barangay Junob that served amazing fried chicken with rice for 60 pesos. I found a barber shop where a haircut cost 40 pesos, and the barber, Roel, spoke great English and loved talking about basketball. I found the public library, which was small but had air conditioning and free Wi-Fi, and became a place I'd go to read. I discovered that if you're polite and make even the smallest effort, Filipinos will go out of their way for you. I learned basic phrases. Magandang umaga, good morning. Salamat, thank you. Magkano, how much. People's faces would light up when I used them. I was terrible at Tagalog, my pronunciation was awful, but they appreciated that I tried. By December, I'd settled into a routine. I'd wake up around 6 when it started getting light, make coffee, sit on my balcony and watch the city wake up. Around 7, I'd walk down to the boulevard and do a long walk, 3 or 4 kilometers. Then breakfast at one of the places along the water, pancit canton, a noodle dish, or tapsilog, which is dried beef with rice and eggs. Cost about 100 pesos, $2. I'd come home, read, maybe watch something on my laptop. Lunch was usually simple, something from the Carinderia near my building, these little eateries where you point at what looks good. Dinner I'd sometimes cook, sometimes eat out. My monthly expenses were running about $900 to $1,000 total. Rent, utilities, food, transportation, everything. My Social Security was $1,900. I was saving $1,000 a month without trying. For the first time in years, money wasn't this constant source of anxiety. But I was lonely. I was around people, but I wasn't connected to anyone. Tom and Maricel were great, but they had their own life. The expat guys were acquaintances, not friends. I'd go days sometimes without a real conversation, and the silence started to feel heavy. In January, Maricel asked if I wanted to come to a birthday party for her nephew. It was going to be a big family thing, she said, lots of people, maybe overwhelming, but I was welcome. I almost said no, but what else was I doing? I said yes. The party was in a barangay outside the city, at the nephew's family compound. When Filipinos say birthday party, they mean something different than what I was used to. There were probably 70 people there, a whole roasted pig on a table, karaoke set up in the yard, kids running everywhere. I was the only foreigner. People kept coming up to introduce themselves, asking where I was from, welcoming me. It was loud and chaotic, and I felt completely out of place. There was a woman helping in the kitchen, maybe late 50s, very pretty, always smiling. She brought out a tray of lumpia, fried spring rolls, and offered me one. I took it and said salamat. She said something in Visayan, the local dialect, and I shook my head. Sorry, I only speak English. She switched to English, barely an accent. First time to a Filipino party? Is it that obvious? She laughed. You look terrified. Her name was Elena. She was Maricel's cousin, though everyone in the Philippines seems to be everyone else's cousin. She was a widow. Her husband had died 8 years earlier. She had 2 daughters, both working in Manila. She was a retired nurse. She'd worked in Saudi Arabia for 15 years, which is why her English was so good. We ended up talking for 2 hours, just easy conversation. She asked about my life. I asked about hers. She didn't treat me like a strange foreigner. She didn't ask how I liked the Philippines or if I could eat the food or any of the questions I usually got. She just talked to me like a person. When the party started winding down, she said it was nice to meet me, and I realized I didn't want her to go. I asked Maricel about her on the drive home. Maricel got this knowing smile. Elena is very nice, she said. Good woman. She didn't push, but I could tell she was pleased I'd asked. I couldn't stop thinking about Elena, which felt ridiculous. I was 73 years old. Catherine had been gone barely a year. What was I doing? But I couldn't help it. I asked Maricel if she thought Elena would want to have coffee sometime. Maricel said she'd ask. 2 days later, I met Elena at a cafe downtown. I was nervous like a teenager. We talked for 3 hours. She told me about working in Saudi, how hard it was, but how it let her send money home and put her daughters through college. She told me about her husband, Nestor, who'd been a carpenter and died of a heart attack at 61. She said she'd been lonely, too, that her daughters wanted her to move to Manila, but she loved Dumaguete. This was home. I told her about Catherine, about losing everything, about ending up here. She listened without judgment. When I finished, she reached across the table and touched my hand. You're brave, she said. I almost laughed. I didn't feel brave. I felt like I'd run away. But the way she said it, I almost believed her. We started seeing each other regularly. Coffee, lunch, walks along the boulevard. It wasn't dating, not at first, just 2 lonely people who enjoyed each other's company. She introduced me to her friends. I introduced her to Tom and Maricel, though they already knew each other. She showed me parts of Dumaguete I hadn't seen, took me to her favorite spots, a little church up in the hills, a beach 30 minutes away where locals went on Sundays. She was patient with my cultural ignorance. I'd do something rude without realizing it, like pointing with my finger instead of my lips, which is how Filipinos point, or handing someone something with my left hand. She'd gently correct me. She taught me more Visayan phrases. She explained things about Filipino culture, about family obligations and saving face, and why people said yes even when they meant no. By March, I realized I'd fallen for her, completely. At 73 years old, I felt like I was 20 again. I didn't know if she felt the same. I didn't know the protocol. In America, I'd have just asked her out properly, made it clear. But here there were rules I didn't understand, especially with the age thing. She was 59, not a huge gap, but I was foreign, I was older. I didn't want to assume. I finally just told her one evening as we were watching the sunset from the boulevard. I said, Elena, I need you to know I have feelings for you, real feelings. And if you don't feel the same way, that's okay, I'll understand. But I had to tell you. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Richard, I have feelings for you too. But you need to understand something. If we do this, if we are together, my family will have opinions. My daughters will worry I'm being foolish. People will talk. Some will say I'm with you for money. Are you with me for money? No. And I don't care what people say. She smiled. You say that now. We started officially seeing each other. I met her daughters when they visited in April. They were polite but clearly skeptical. I didn't blame them. Some random American guy dating their mom? I'd be skeptical too. I didn't try to win them over. I just tried to treat their mother well and let time do the work. Elena didn't need my money. She had her own pension from nursing, plus some rental income from a small apartment she owned. But Filipino culture is different. Family is everything. Her siblings, her nieces and nephews, they all expected her to help when there were problems. A nephew needed money for school. A niece had medical bills. It wasn't like they were taking advantage. It's just how things work here. Family helps family. At first, it made me uncomfortable. In the States, adults are supposed to be independent. You don't ask your aunt for money. But here, it's not shameful. It's expected. Elena explained it to me. When I was working in Saudi and my daughters needed school tuition, my siblings helped. Now I help them. It's what you do. I had to adjust my thinking. This wasn't freeloading. This was a different kind of social safety net. And honestly, once I understood it, I respected it. Americans are so obsessed with independence that we end up isolated. Here, people actually took care of each other. Elena and I traveled a bit. We took a ferry to Siquijor, a small island known for beaches and supposedly witchcraft. We spent a weekend in Bacolod visiting her cousin. We went up to the mountains to see the Twin Lakes. I'd barely traveled in my 73 years, and here I was seeing things I'd never imagined. By June, we were talking about moving in together. Her place or mine, we hadn't decided. I realized I wanted to make a real commitment. I wanted to marry her. But I also knew I had to do it right, culturally. I talked to Tom and Maricel. They explained that I should talk to Elena's family first, especially her daughters, get their blessing. It felt old-fashioned in a way I liked. I called her daughters and had separate conversations with each. I told them I loved their mother, that I wanted to take care of her, that I wasn't trying to replace their father, but I hoped they could accept me. It was awkward, but they appreciated that I'd asked. The younger one, Grace, was warmer. The older one, Patricia, was more reserved, but said if their mom was happy, they'd support it. I proposed to Elena in July, on the same spot on the boulevard where I'd first told her I had feelings for her. I didn't have a ring yet. I wanted her to pick it. I just got down on one knee, which was harder at 73 than I expected, and asked her to marry me. She cried. She said yes. People around us clapped, which I hadn't expected but should have. Filipinos love romance. You know what? I'm going to pause here for a second and tell you about something. There's a book called The Honest Move that goes into the real costs, the cities compared, the visa process, the healthcare system, and the traps you need to avoid when moving to the Philippines. Look, I'm not going to do a hard sell here, but genuinely, if you're sitting there thinking about making a move like this, whether you're broke or comfortable or somewhere in between, that book covers all the practical stuff that I had to figure out the hard way. It's not some fantasy nonsense. It's the real deal. You'll find the link in the description if you want to check it out. Anyway, back to what I was saying. We got married in September of 2020, right as COVID was starting to become a global thing, though we didn't know how bad it would get. We had a small ceremony at the church Elena attended, just family and close friends. Maricel helped organize everything. I wore a barong, the traditional Filipino formal shirt. Elena wore a simple white dress and looked absolutely beautiful. Her daughters came down from Manila. My own kids couldn't make it, which hurt. But Jennifer sent a nice video message that we played at the reception. The reception was at a restaurant on the boulevard, maybe 40 people. Lechon, pancit, lumpia, all the traditional foods. Karaoke, of course. Elena's nephew sang My Way, which I learned is a huge deal in the Philippines. Tom gave a speech about how he'd brought me to Dumaguete, and now look what happened. Everyone laughed. Maricel cried. I cried. It was one of the happiest days of my life. Elena moved into my condo. We talked about getting a bigger place eventually, maybe a small house with a yard. But for now, it worked. She brought her things, her pictures, her little collection of religious statues that Filipinos seem to love. The place felt like a home for the first time. Then COVID hit hard. The Philippines locked down completely in March of 2021. I mean, completely. You couldn't leave your barangay without a pass. Only one person per household could go out to buy groceries, and only on certain days based on your birthday. They had checkpoints everywhere, police and military. For a while there was a curfew. If you were out after 10 p.m., you could get arrested. For some expats, it was a nightmare. They felt trapped. Some tried to fly home, but flights were canceled. Some did manage to leave. But for me, honestly, it wasn't that bad. I had Elena. We were together. We had food. We had internet. We were safe. We played cards, watched movies, cooked together. I taught her how to make spaghetti the way my mom used to make it. She taught me how to cook adobo properly. The lockdown lasted months. When it finally eased up a bit, we were allowed to move around more, but everything had changed. Restaurants were closed or limited. You had to wear face shields and masks everywhere. The economy tanked. A lot of Filipinos lost work. Elena's family needed help more than usual. We gave what we could. But we got through it. And honestly, going through something that hard together made us closer. I saw how Elena handled stress, how she stayed positive even when things were scary. She saw that I didn't fall apart when life got difficult. We came out of COVID stronger. By the time restrictions really lifted in late 2022, I'd been in the Philippines for 3 years. I was 76 years old. Elena and I had been married for 2 years, and I realized something that I hadn't fully grasped before. I wasn't just surviving here. I was thriving. The money thing that had terrified me back in California was no longer scary at all. My Social Security still came in every month, direct deposit. I'd set up my banking so it transferred automatically to my Philippine account. Our expenses had actually gone down. We were spending maybe $1,200 a month for both of us, living well. We ate out 3 or 4 times a week. We had air conditioning. We took trips. I was still banking $700 a month minimum. My savings, instead of draining, had actually grown. I had more money at 76 than I'd had at 73. But more than the financial security, it was everything else. I had a wife I loved, who loved me back. I had her family who'd accepted me. I had friends. I had routines I enjoyed. Every morning, Elena and I would walk the boulevard together. We'd stop at our favorite breakfast place, a little spot called Gabby's, where the owner knew our order before we said it. Tapsilog for me, champorado for Elena, which is this chocolate rice porridge I still think is weird, but she loves. We'd come home and Elena would usually meet up with her friends, these women she'd known for decades. They'd go to the market together or have merienda, which is like a snack time Filipinos are serious about. I'd read or meet up with Tom or sometimes just sit on the balcony and do absolutely nothing, which I'd gotten very good at. A couple times a week, I started volunteering at a local organization that helped street kids get school supplies. Nothing major. I wasn't saving the world, but it felt good to be useful, to give back a little to the place that had given me so much. There was a kid there, Joshua, maybe 12 years old, smart as hell, but his family couldn't afford school fees. I started sponsoring him. 3,000 pesos a semester, about $60. Nothing for me, everything for him. He's in high school now, doing great. Elena's daughters warmed up to me over time. Patricia, the older one, stayed a bit distant but cordial. Grace, the younger one, really opened up. She'd call her mom and end up talking to me too, asking my advice on things, telling me about her job, her boyfriend. On Mother's Day and Elena's birthday, they'd send flowers and make sure to include a card for both of us. Small things, but they meant the world. I reconnected with my own kids a bit more too. Jennifer came to visit in early 2023 with her husband. She'd been so worried about me, and I think she expected to find me in some questionable situation. Instead, she found me happy, healthy, in a nice place with a wonderful woman. I saw her relax over the course of the week. She and Elena got along great. By the time she left, she hugged me and whispered, "I'm so glad you did this, Dad." Paul never visited, but we started talking on the phone more regularly. Short calls, nothing deep, but more than we'd done in years. He admitted he'd thought I was running away from my problems. Maybe I was, I told him. But sometimes running away from problems and running toward solutions looks the same. I thought a lot about Catherine during those years, not with pain anymore, but with gratitude. We'd had a good marriage. She'd been a good woman. The fact that it ended in loss and grief didn't erase the 48 years before that. I think she'd be happy that I found Elena. I think she'd like that I didn't just give up and waste away. At least that's what I choose to believe. One thing I noticed was how differently I felt about aging here. In the States, being old felt like being invisible, like being in the way. Here, older people are respected. Granted, I have advantages being a foreigner with a pension that most Filipino seniors don't have. I'm not naive about that. But culturally, age isn't treated like something shameful. Elena's mother is 92 and still runs the family. What she says goes. People ask her advice. She's not shuffled off to a nursing home. She lives with Elena's brother, and everyone visits her constantly. I became that older guy at the expat meetups who the newer arrivals would ask for advice. How do I get a driver's license? Where's a good dentist? What's the deal with property ownership? I'd remember being that confused new guy and try to help. Some guys I could tell weren't going to make it. They wanted the Philippines to be America with cheaper beer. When it wasn't, they got bitter. Others adapted, embraced it, and thrived. There was a moment, I think it was in April of 2023, where everything kind of crystallized for me. Elena and I had gone to Apo Island for the day, which is this tiny island about 45 minutes by boat from Dumaguete. We went snorkeling. I hadn't been swimming in years. I was 76 years old, floating in water so clear you could see 30 feet down, watching sea turtles swim below me. Elena was next to me, laughing because I kept losing my snorkel every time I got excited and tried to point something out. We came back to shore and had lunch at a little beach shack. Fresh grilled fish, rice, mango shake. Cost maybe 300 pesos total, $6. We sat there in the shade watching the water, not talking much, just being. And I thought about where I'd been 5 years earlier, standing in that empty house in Sacramento, broken, convinced my life was over. And here I was, on a tropical island, with a woman I loved, financially stable, healthy, happy, actually genuinely happy. I'm not going to tell you the Philippines is perfect. It's not. The bureaucracy can be maddening. The heat is relentless. The internet goes out at the worst times. There's poverty here that's hard to see. The political situation is complicated in ways I don't fully understand, and probably never will as an outsider. Typhoons hit every year. Infrastructure is decades behind the West. But here's what I figured out. Perfection isn't the point. The point is finding a place where your life works, where what you have is enough, where you can build something meaningful with the years you have left. I'm 77 now. I've been here for almost 5 years. My health is better than it was in California. I walk more. I eat more fish and vegetables. I'm not stressed all the time. I sleep well. I have regular checkups at a hospital here that's actually quite good, and my doctor speaks perfect English. My blood pressure is down. I lost 20 pounds without trying. Elena and I bought a small house last year, nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, in a quiet neighborhood about 15 minutes from downtown. We have a yard where Elena has a garden. She grows tomatoes and eggplant and all these herbs and peppers. We have a dog now, a rescue mutt named Lucky that showed up at our gate one day and never left. We have a mango tree that produces more mangoes than we could ever eat, so we give them to neighbors. Our life is simple. We wake up with the sun, we have our coffee, we do our walk, we see friends, we help family when they need it. We watch the news and shake our heads at the state of the world. We cook dinner together most nights. We watch stupid game shows on Filipino TV that I don't understand but Elena loves. We go to bed early. It's not the life I imagined. It's better. People ask me sometimes if I miss America. I miss my kids, but we video call regularly. I miss certain foods, but honestly, there's a surprising amount available here. And what I can't get, I've learned to live without. Do I miss Target and NFL football and knowing how everything works? Sometimes, but not enough to go back. The money I was so terrified of running out of, I have more than I started with. The loneliness I felt after Catherine died, gone. The sense that my life was over, completely wrong. Everything I thought I'd lost, I found again. Not the same versions, better versions. I lost my first wife, but I found Elena. I lost my house in California, but I found a home here. I lost my savings to medical bills, but I rebuilt financial security. I thought at 72 that everything was over. I was wrong. It was just beginning. If you're watching this and you're in a similar position, whether you're broke or just lost or scared about the future, I want you to hear this. It's not over. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how little money you have. I don't care how impossible it seems. There are options you haven't considered. There are places in the world where you can live well on less. There are second chances. Moving to the Philippines isn't for everyone. Maybe it's Thailand or Portugal or Mexico or Ecuador. Maybe it's just a different state. The specific place isn't the point. The point is that you have more control than you think. You're not stuck. At 72, standing in that empty house, I thought I was stuck. I wasn't. I was just scared. The best decision I ever made was getting on that plane. Not because the Philippines is paradise. It's not. But because I chose to try. I chose to believe there might be something better out there. And there was. I'm sitting here now on my balcony in Dumaguete. It's late afternoon. Elena is inside making dinner. I can hear her singing along to some Filipino love song on the radio. Lucky is sleeping at my feet. The sun is setting over the mountains. In a few minutes I'll go inside and we'll eat and watch TV and go to bed. It's a completely ordinary day, and it's extraordinary. At 77, I'm more grateful for my life than I've ever been. Not because everything is perfect, but because I'm here, because I didn't give up, because I took a chance on something that seemed impossible. I lost everything at 72. The Philippines gave it all back. Not the same things, better things. A second life, a second chance, a reason to wake up every morning grateful. If you got something out of this story, or if you're seriously thinking about making a move to the Philippines, I'll mention one more time that book I brought up earlier, The Honest Move. It covers all the real stuff, the visa process, which cities make sense for different budgets, how healthcare actually works here, what the hidden costs are, and the traps that catch people who come here unprepared. It's in the description. Worth a look if you're serious. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps somebody out there who needs to hear it. Your life isn't over, not even close.